I was at a pretty low point. I wanted to start a family. I just didn't know how to do that and have a career. I was in Italy and I was traveling back. I was that mum with a screaming baby walking down the aisle, and no one wants you to sit next to them, right? I was so lucky because this lady jumped up from her seat and said, "Come and sit next to me."
Does this woman that sat next to you know how she influenced your career and your life, really?
Maybe I didn't need to be employed and have a job.
All
And
right.
actually I could go solo and set myself up and work for a number of organizations as a fractional CFO. And that's what I started to do.
Welcome to today's episode of Dr. Patty Ann's podcast. And today I have a fantastic guest that has come to us from across the pond. And allow me to introduce you to Sara Daw. Sara is an entrepreneur, a researcher, writer, and a speaker that speaks upon the future of work, because who cares what happened in the past? We need to go forward and look at what the future will hold. So Sara is the co-founder and the group CEO of the CFO Center, and she's written a best-selling book. And she has a company called the Liberty Group that operates in 17 countries. So without further ado, allow me to welcome Sara to the podcast. Welcome, Sara. Thank you for coming here today.
Oh, thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Great. So I love interviewing strong, powerful, successful women. And I'd like to start by asking you a question. Can you tell us something about yourself that people cannot Google, they can't read about? Most people, if not all people, don't know about you. An experience that you've had that has shaped the person you are today and the success that you've experienced as a businesswoman.
That's a good question. Always a good question to start off with. Thanks very much for that. So I'm going to tell you something about me that I'm doing at the moment, actually, that is hardly any people know about it, really. So I'm actually hosting
Hang
a
on a
family.
second, Sara. This is something from your past, not something that you're
Okay.
doing now.
Right. Okay. So I guess something from my past that not a lot of people know is, when I first was working out where to take my future, after, a long stint in organizations at corporate level and also at, in learning institutions, I was at a pretty low point because I wanted to start a family. I just didn't know how to do that and have a career. And it was
It's
pretty
so
hard.
hard for women. It's so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was pretty hard starting a family as well. That didn't sort of go to plan straight away either. So I guess, so if you see what I mean, I wanted to have a career and be a businesswoman. I also wanted to be a mum, and I wasn't really working. It wasn't really working in either department. So I guess that's the first thing. I must go on to say I've got 3 beautiful daughters now. So that's wonderful. But at the time, when you don't know that things are going to work out, you just don't know. So, it's a really, it's
But
really
wait
quite
on,
low
but wait a
point.
second, Sara. But so your dilemma was you wanted to what we call have it all, which is my first book. Not tonight, dear. I've got a business to run, right? And it teaches women how to create a business plan and how to create a family plan so they complement and don't compete against each other. And normally the corporate world, it's very difficult to get that, which is why I think more and more women are starting their own entrepreneurial business as you did. But what was it? What was the inspiration? Who was the inspiration? What was the experience that finally you said, I'm out of the corporate world and I'm going to start my own business? Because you've probably been pondering that for a while, as many people do, but not everybody takes the leap. So what was
Yeah.
it that allowed you, gave you the courage to take that leap? Because it takes a lot of courage. Even though there's a lot of issues with the corporate world, there's a lot of perhaps false, but there is a lot of security-ish around that world. And in the States, it's health benefits, which is huge. I know in England,
Mm,
you don't have that challenge. You have other
No.
challenges with your healthcare, right? And then we have, 401 matching. Like there's a lot of things that come with working for someone else.
Yeah. Firstly, I wish I had your book back then. But in the absence of that at the
Well, you can
time,
get it's on Amazon.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks. In the absence of that at the time, it was, I guess, necessity, really. I wanted to have a career, but it needed to be flexible because I wanted to be there for my kids as they were growing
Mhm.
up.
Mhm.
And, how on earth do you do that? So the only way I figured out that you could do that is by creating something new and different that
Right.
allowed that to happen. Um, and I got the inspiration, actually, weirdly enough, I got the inspiration from a plane ride. So I was in Italy and I was traveling back from there with my daughter, and it was our first solo flight together. She was, a few months old, and I was that screaming mum, the mum with the screaming baby walking down the aisle, and no one wants you to sit next to them, right? They're all got
And
their
how long
eyes
ago was
down.
this? How long ago was this?
2002.
Okay, so 20 years ago. Yeah, nobody wants to sit next to
No,
that.
exactly. And they're all willing you not to sit next to them. And then, I was so lucky because this lady jumped up from her seat and said, "Come and sit next to me." And it was in the days where, we didn't have allocated seats. And she
Yeah.
took my daughter from me and started amusing her while I packed things away. And then I sat down next to her. And because of that, the flight went like a dream. And my daughter was, kept amused by the both of us. But I got talking to this lady, and this lady was a portfolio non-executive director for large, big, big, big PLCs in the UK at the time. And I'd never heard of that as a concept. And that was what sort of opened my eyes to the fact that maybe I didn't need to be employed and have a job, a proper job as it was called in those days.
All
And
right.
actually, I could go solo and set myself up and work for a number of organizations as a fractional CFO. And that's what I started to do. And then I
Was it
thought, if I,
called that at the time? Because I know that's very,
no, no.
even now, I
We
guess a lot of people don't know what a fractional CFO is, but back then that was unheard of.
we called them part-time at that stage.
Okay,
And that had quite negative connotations as
sure.
well. Because, if
Well,
you're
now you're on the
part-time,
mommy track.
yeah, yeah. But the great thing was that when I set myself up to do that, the beautiful thing about it was that when I connected with entrepreneurial businesses, and that's what I did, was so that I could give them these skills that they couldn't get access to full time, but they could have my skills a day a week, 2 days a month.
Yeah.
Was that these business owners lived in the real world too. They had babies and mother-in-laws and dogs under the desk. And so they were totally open to the fact that I was there trying to raise a family and was a sort of and had the same issues as them about how to juggle life and run a business. And I think I felt just really at home with these people because they could really understand, what it was like to mix family life with business. And that was not accepted in corporate in those days at all. You
Mhm.
couldn't even mention, that you had a family. You had to
Yeah.
just, get on with the job.
Actually, I used to tell, thank you for sharing that. I used to tell women years ago before cell phones, whatever you, this is terrible, but don't, whatever, it's reality. Whatever you do, don't call in sick because your kid is sick. Say you got a flat tire. Say whatever you want because it will be okay with your boss until it's not. Like whatever that means. Today you can't do that because you'd have to take a picture of the flat tire and tell them, show it to them. But my point is, it was very much and honestly, today, if you work for a company that has a limited number of sick days or even unlimited, you're probably better off not saying I'm staying home for my kids because my kid's sick. What women in the States do is we take our sick time for when our kids are sick, but when we're sick, we go to work. No judgment,
Yeah.
but there
Mm.
is still that out there a little bit. But I am curious though, Sara, does this woman that sat next to you know how she influenced your career and your life, really?
Yeah, yes, because we became friends after that. And I met up with her afterwards as well to learn more, really. And because I was swimming around at that point trying to figure out what this new career might look like. So we did meet afterwards. So she did start to see the fact of my idea shaping afterwards. And I really respected the advice that she gave me.
That's great. So it sounds like she was your first mentor.
Yes, I think so. And it's really interesting because I reflect on women mentors, and I don't feel I've had that many throughout my time in business, but I would consider her to be one of my first.
Great.
I've had one more recently through the learning that I've been doing back in school at university, but I don't, there's a lack of them, right?
Yeah.
There's a lack of them. So I'm trying to do my bit and mentor others as well.
Great.
And pay it forward really.
Great. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. So, how do you feel being a mom has contributed to your success as an entrepreneur?
That's such a good question. Look, when we were building our business, I was bringing up three girls.
Now, were
And
you married? Are you married? Were you married?
Yes, I was
Okay.
married, and interestingly, just going back to your point around, children being sick, and so my third child I had while I was building the business, and I said to the businesses owners that I work with, I said, obviously, I'm going to be having a baby in about 6 weeks.
Obviously.
Pretty obvious. We know it's coming, and I said, what do you want to do? Would you like to work with another CFO from our team while perhaps I can't travel to you straight away after having my third child. And they said, no, it's fine, we will come to you and come to your house if we need you. And they did. And I remember that, and that to
Yeah.
me was the relationship that we built. It was proven that we were so comfortable with each other. They were happy to come around and hold my newborn while I'm on the phone to the bank for them for
And were
doing
those men
CFO work.
and women or both?
They were male actually.
So that's
um
great. That's great. I do a lot of work with financial firms because the work I do doesn't matter what your business is, right? It's all the emotional intelligence, all the essential skills of running a business, which is the people. And it's very interesting today. I feel that the men in the financial world that I've attracted, right? And it's probably what you've attracted. It's probably who you were that brought those type of people into your space, because there'll be plenty of men that would look at you if you had 10 heads, including today. Certainly plenty of them on Wall Street. And yet, because for years when I would pitch corporate and, would say, it's the relationship skills that drive the bottom line, they're like, yeah, no, we don't need your help. We just need somebody to run the numbers. And I'm like, well, that's pretty short-sighted, right? But then I've attracted the men that absolutely, I mean, I have CEOs all the time tell me, it's all psychology, it's all relationship skills. But back
yeah
20 years ago, that wasn't the case. So you were quite, the tip of the spear, if you will. You were absolutely ahead of the curve. So that is so encouraging for me to hear, especially in the financial world, which is, you know, maybe makes investment bankers and PE guys look progressive.
Yeah, exactly. I think I probably did attract certain types. And the beauty of the way, part-time and fractional working is set up is that we're actively choosing which businesses we want to work with.
Right.
So it's a two-way street, and the idea is work with people that you like. Then you've got a chance of building a trusting relationship. If it's not
Exactly.
working, if it doesn't feel right, then it's probably not right on both sides. So go find someone else. And I'm a big believer in that. So I guess that was that scenario played out for me. We liked each other, we worked well together, and it just seemed a complete natural step that we would move to that sort of level of intimacy, if you like, around the relationship when I
It's the
needed the help.
relationship. And like you said, when you build, my line is all success is predicated upon the ability to create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships. And unfortunately, especially in the financial world, it's like one and done kind of thing, right? But if you build that long-term relationship, it's to use your terms, it's like compounded interest. It's unbelievable. I have to ask you though, when you said you choose who you decide to work with, what is that based on? How does that decision-making process go down? Because many people, especially when they start out, will take any client. I don't.
Yes.
People say, who do you work with? I'm like, well, if you're going to be a pain in my butt, and if I don't like you, I'm not working with you because it's not fun. And I can't give you my all. Naturally, I think I'm giving my all, but I won't. So how do you decipher that who you take on and who you don't?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when you first start out and trying to build a portfolio of businesses and types of people to work with, you probably don't really know. I mean, and and so I think it's a bit trial and error to begin with. You might get lucky and land, land the bullseye straight away. But I think the key thing is being honest with yourself and with the other party. And if it's sticky, if it's not working, and you've had an attempt to try and change that and have some conversations around it not working and it still doesn't work, then I think the key thing is to bow out gracefully, and
Mhm.
maybe someone else can work with them. But obvious, and therefore it's that takes
But,
courage
but
though
but
because
Sarah,
it's
what are the
money.
specifics? But what are the specifics that you are looking for in a client? That
Okay.
some like right away, some of it's like, yeah, not for us. And others like, okay, let me bet this further.
Yeah, I think it's being open-minded from a business owner's
Mhm.
perspective. So, because we're going in as an outsider to start with, becoming an insider, hopefully. But you want someone who is willing to listen and hear you out, and be open-minded to doing things differently.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes that's quite tricky with some people. They
That's a,
they
yeah,
like
that's
to
a
do it
great
the way
one.
they've
Yeah,
done it.
that's a great one. Hmm.
So I think being open-minded is a key thing. I think, values being aligned around how do they run their business and what do they value in their organization compared to what do I value? And do
So
they
what's the
match
most
up?
important value you want them to have to demonstrate? Not just
So
say
for
they have,
me, I mean,
demonstrate.
I guess for me, it's being open and progressive and passionate around
Okay.
um so doing things with gusto, wanting to try new things. That's the progressive piece, the learning and growing. I've
The
definitely into the
curiosity, curiosity.
yeah, 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 yeah. And and therefore the openness and those are values that I would really appreciate in others. Kindness, as well. I mean, we mess up sometimes, but let's be open
Sure.
about it and be kind.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a business question for you. So, what do you do differently now based upon what you've learned with your clients now than you would have done with your first client with the Liberty Group?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I guess, you
Right?
know,
Because being a CFO things aren't all that different, right? In
no,
terms of the work. And
yeah.
that's probably a gross oversimplification, but one and one has to add up to two. All that kind of stuff. So what would you do differently based upon what you've learned now than you did, like in reality, than you did when you first started?
I think the key thing is to realize that listening really well to the business owner and carving out time to spend time with them and creating an environment where they're just willing, able to share. And I think in the early days, I was very much around, I need to prove my worth, I need to deliver, deliver, deliver. And absolutely, I'm not saying that you don't have to do that later on, but
Of
not at
course.
the expense of understanding who these people are that you're working for and what really is making them tick. And that
Hmm.
takes time and investment. You've got to hang out with them a bit
Hmm.
to allow them to realize that you're not just there for to do a task. You're there because you're invested in them and you want to see how they work and what's important to them, and you're really curious around how you can help. And you can't do that if you're not sort of willing to give them the time.
I
So I
mean, you're
think,
talking about you take the time to build a relationship.
yeah, and I think it's really important that you know that's a priority. and
Hmm.
not seen as something that you do later on or down the line. I think it's a real priority. It's quite tricky when you first go into businesses because on the one hand you need to deliver because they've got a problem to solve, but on the other
Hmm.
hand you need to spend some time to see how to build up trust. I mean, ultimately we're in the game of trust, I think. We're
Hmm.
in the game of creating trust between individuals. And if they know you're there for them anytime, then for me, that's what really counts. That's what
Well,
really
it's funny you
counts.
say that too, because the way you build a relationship is with trust. And without trust, you don't have a relationship.
Yeah.
When was there a time, I would imagine there's been a time, and if you could share it with us, when you were fooled, like, 80 20, right? 80 to 80% of the time we get it right, and 20% of the time we're like, oh my Lord, how did I not see that coming? So when's a time where you thought you had that trust, or you built that trust, or perhaps more importantly, the client was trustworthy, and you later came to find out not so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, with businesses, and you never really know what's going on in someone else's world. So you can follow a line of thought that's showing up in your world and not necessarily see everything. So I guess, I have at times run out of patience with some business owners, um, because then they've just stopped listening. Around, and that I think is where I know I've sort of hit the wall, and something has to change in order for me to continue. And it's that
Mhm.
point is when do you feel you can, because you've invested so much, I've invested so much in a relationship. When do I feel it's time to call it a day and say,
Mhm.
look, this isn't working. And I've definitely had that where I've had businesses and I've given them the benefit of the doubt and the benefit of the doubt, but then things never change. And
Mhm.
then I've got to really question whether I should be there anymore because I'm not actually, I'm not actually delivering for them because they're not changing. And it's not satisfying for me at the end of the day. And it has to be an exchange. There has to be a value exchange. You know, I have to feel like I'm making an impact.
Mhm.
So I have definitely had that, and I've probably overextended the time and given them the benefit of the doubt too long.
Mhm.
But eventually, had to say, look, this isn't working for me anymore. And it either causes a change in the relationship or we part company. And
Mhm.
I think that's healthy. That's healthy.
Sure. Sure. What do you find most gratifying about your work?
Most definitely seeing the impact that organizations can have for themselves, for the business owner, for having a successful business for their employees, and for everyone that sort of interacts with that business. I think, seeing the business owner go from sometimes feeling trapped in their organization. You grow a business, so you think you're growing a business to do the thing that you love, but you end up growing a business and every decision ends at your door, and
The business
and
owns you. The
the
business
business owns
owns
you
you.
and you're trapped. And I see that a lot. I've seen business owners not go into the office because they don't want to face 500 emails in their inbox, and they absent themselves from the business because
Wait,
then
but they
they're
don't
just
have to
there.
go into the office. They have a cell phone.
Yeah, but this was in the days when we used to go in.
Yeah.
Absolutely, like switched off from their business because they're
Mm.
so overwhelmed and on breaking point,
Mm.
burnout point.
Mm.
And I think, when you get to that point, it's so sad because it isn't the reason that they were in business in the first place. And
Mm.
it's how can we ease the burden of those organizations and
What do you
provide
feel?
help?
What do you feel? Because I work with CEOs in that regard and entrepreneurs in that regard too. But what do you see as the one or two main drivers, culprits of the burnout?
I think people get a bit addicted to the work
Mm.
environment, like the dopamine hit, in some respects
So
of
they want to be
you
wanted,
need
but
it.
then they want to be wanted and it never stops.
Yeah.
They want to be
Yeah.
wanted when they want to be wanted. But
Yeah.
when you
But
give
you
them
can't,
need
that
to be
doesn't work.
wanted, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
how do
think
you how do
that's
you pull
some
them
of it.
away from that? Because I see that as what I do. I don't see that as what the CFOs
Yeah,
do.
exactly. And I think that's where individuals need, they need a coach, they need some
Right,
help, they perhaps need some therapy, they need some self-awareness, to, they need an intervention of
right.
personally, I think.
So you
Um,
tell them they need to get a coach?
we would definitely
Really?
I would
Great.
definitely have that conversation if I felt it would if I felt health wise it's really what was needed. I would definitely have that conversation.
And
Yeah.
have you?
Yes. Yeah,
And
we
how has
introduce
it been
we would
received?
introduce coaches to business owners, most definitely.
How has it been received?
Um, it well, varied. Some really see that they need that, and some don't. I mean, I've definitely had coaches helping me do that to stop, to help me get to the point where I'm not at breaking point. So I guess having had it firsthand positive experience, I can speak sort of well of
Right.
having that support. And some will do it and some won't. But I mean, I can't force them to, but I would
Sure.
definitely encourage it. And I would
So,
definitely
but if someone
introduce.
doesn't get the help with that, and coaching is like the wild, wild west. Everybody and anybody can call themselves a coach. I sort of kind of chuckle at some of the qualifications or lack thereof, but whatever. But if somebody clearly needs coaching to get out of their own way, we'll say, and they won't, and yet that's the obstacle for you helping them, what do you do?
Gosh, I don't know if I've ever actually had that where they won't. Um,
Well, you said
I'd
sometimes
probably
people say no.
yes, I'd probably try and have a soft sort of introduction or try and make an introduction that was as soft as possible.
Hmm.
Um, to encourage them to have some sort of experience, maybe a lunch or something. I'd try and organize something for them to at
Hmm.
least dip their toe in
Hmm.
to try and break the ice if it were. I mean, a lot of people, I think less so now. I think coaches are more mainstream than they
Mainstream.
were.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, and
The problem
also
is there's so many of them. Yeah.
I'd also use the sporting analogy a lot, which often works really well around all the top sports people have coaches. It's not a weakness.
Right.
It's part of your
Well,
armor.
the best CEOs have coaches.
Exactly.
And if they
Exactly.
don't, I wouldn't promote if I don't have a coach, quite frankly.
Exactly.
It's
I think it is
why
way
you're
more
not.
acceptable now. I haven't had the situation where people have flatly did not, said no.
Interesting. Interesting. The reason why I ask is I could see how it could make your life really miserable. And what I just tell people is when you can't influence somebody, then find out who influences the influence,
Yes, good point.
right? And then that can be in the back door, if
That
you
can
will.
be the way in. Yeah.
Right. So how have you seen, sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same in the financial world. Having said that, right, in the HR world, how have you seen those businesses change for you? And how has your work accommodated that shift? Because the speed of change and AI,
Yeah.
it is mind-boggling, right? We're never going to
Yes.
get rid of the human touch, but having said that, there has to be accommodations.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the world, I think roles are going to be fragmenting more in the future, into jobs and work tasks, some of
Mm.
which will be done by humans and some will be done by humans with machines,
Hmm.
or, automation. And so and that's already happening, but I think it's going to happen a lot more, and the pace of change is going to increase around that. And that's, I guess, where I feel the future of work will end up. And I think, we need to get our heads around that. We don't have to work full time anymore.
Hmm.
Obviously, there will be some core full time roles, but I think a lot more could be this portfolio approach to work, where individuals have got a number of things they do, and then they can stay in their specialism more and use automation to, optimize that. I do think, we do need to get on board with automation and AI, and we need to see it as the tools that it is, that it can really take quite a lot of the mainstream routine task away from us. And if we optimize and use those tools, then I think we're going to be in a good place. I think where the danger is if we try and ignore automation and AI because it's coming, and then we're just going to be outdated. So we do
But
need to learn how to use it.
yeah, I mean, it blows my mind to think people would ignore AI because it's a train barreling down and either get on board or get run over. It reminds me when I hear the naysayers about it, it reminds me of when Henry Ford was inventing a
Yeah,
car. It's like, we don't need a
yeah,
car, we just need a faster horse. Like, okay, how's that going to work out for you?
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Um,
mean, and with that analogy, I mean, you could still deliver everything, deliver packages on horse and cart now. It would just cost a lot more and take a lot longer. And that's where we're going to be with AI. So
I
if we
was
want to keep
actually
up,
I
we need to
I was
optimize it.
actually reading a book. I forget the title of it, but it's something I'd never thought about, and you just reminded me of it. They were talking about when the train was being invented to go across the West, and it was talking about the decline of for lack of a better way of saying it, the Pony Express. I think it was called the Whip, and it was about the riders and what were they going to do. So forever with progress, we've had these moments
We
in
have.
history where you have to get on board. And I think um, if we didn't, we'd still be getting heat with the two sticks together.
Yeah.
So I find it exciting, but I think people do look at it from a fearful place where and nobody wants change. We all say we want change, but we really don't, just because it's scary. You
Yes. And at the moment I feel we're in that place where there's a lot of tools available out there for us, but the tools that were available last week will be superseded by the ones this week
Mhm.
and the ones next week. It is
Yes.
changing so fast. And I don't think, there's a lot of businesses and all the tools are sort of vying for position at the moment
Yeah.
around, which are the ones that really work, which are the ones that are going to sort of, really get market leader position and all that sort of stuff. I think we're in that space at the moment where no one really knows, and we're all covering lots of bases and trying to work it out. And I think
Yeah.
that's even more lots of uncertainty, isn't
True.
it? And
It's
and
it's
that's quite hard to deal with.
it's true, and even the way you said it, to me, I feel so excited about that. But I
Yeah.
know I don't think everybody feels excited. They can feel overwhelmed
Yeah.
about that. So what do you think the danger to your work is with where we're going? Even if you have a crystal ball knowing where we're going, there's still, where is the concern for you or the danger, however you want to say it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us in the finance world, finance is going to be a place where AI is going to have a big play.
Hmm.
And, we could have autonomous finance systems in the next 3 or 4 years where it's running in the background for us. So I feel a lot of the tasks that individuals, people are doing at the moment are going to be replaced. And that's a lot, obviously that's a lot of fear around that. I think that we need to look at that as a way to become even more focused on what we can do for the organization
Hmm.
using those tools. So what are the things that organizations really need from finance people and CFOs? And that will be around judgment, which tools to use, very strategic. It will push us into a very strategic place. And I think we need to be mindful that that's where we need to go,
Hmm.
is to really get on the front foot and decide, which tools should we be using? How should we be deploying them? How should we be training our workforce so that they can move up the value chain as well? So
That's interesting. The adaptability factor.
totally. I think we're adaptable humans that need to work with the machines, and we need to be flexible and adaptable humans to work with the automation.
Yeah. I mean, look, when Google came, everyone thought, but you wouldn't need workers. Like, you can just Google. It's just another tool.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it's a powerful tool. It's a great tool, but you also have to know what to put in it, what to get out. I agree with you 100%. So tell me, I'm just curious, how did you go from being a chemistry major to what you do now?
I know. Gosh. Yeah, So when I did chemistry, as you said, and graduated with that from Oxford. And actually, I nearly went into research at that point because I was tempted, but I felt it was a little bit too slow. So
Um,
I made the decision to
the
go into
scientific
business.
process was too slow for you. I could see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I went into becoming a chartered accountant with Deloitte, and that was, it was great. It was
Well,
it was
wait. Okay, so
fabulous
this might be a
training.
difference from the States and the UK. So with the degree in chemistry, you were able to be, when you say a chartered accountant, that's an accountant?
Yes, that will be the equivalent of a CPA, I think, in the States.
Oh, wow. With a chemistry major.
Yeah, so you can do a
Now, I
chemistry major.
understand you're the smartest people in the room, and I understand there's a lot of numbers. I mean, I loved chemistry too, but I'm so amazed, like that would never happen in the States. You'd have to go
Well,
take some probably dumb courses that you already know to call yourself a CPA.
I had to train with Deloitte to become a
Okay.
chartered accountant. So I had to do 3 years worth of training.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah. So it's the same. And a chartered accountant would be similar to being a CPA over
Yeah,
in the States. And that was all about getting a proper job. It was very much in my family growing up, get yourself a proper job. And being
right,
an accountant was a proper job with a proper qualification that could be a foundation forever. So,
right.
so that was the driver. And I did corporate finance with them, which I really enjoyed. But it got to the point where I got fed up of doing nights, if you know
Sure.
what I mean, in terms of
I've worked with accounting
deals.
firms. It's all deadline driven. It's
Yeah.
insane. It's
Yeah.
insane. Yeah,
Every deal finishes at night. I think it's a bravado
right.
thing. We're not going to bed. We are going to finish this deal. Let's not go to bed and start again in
Yeah.
the morning, but let's
Ridiculous.
go
It's
through the
the
night.
male thing. Yeah.
So I just thought this is a bit too much. So that's when I went into industry to get more internal finance experience. I worked with L'Oreal. I actually worked with Lancôme, one of the
Oh, sure.
beauty brands. But it was there that I looked up from a spreadsheet.
I'm surprised they didn't
And
try to hire you as a scientist with their,
well, exactly. Yeah, that could have been another angle, couldn't it?
right?
Um, it was there I looked at from a spreadsheet and thought, gosh, there's all these other disciplines in business. There isn't just finance. And that's when I went back to school and I went and did an MBA at London Business School in order to learn about all the other disciplines. And then it
Okay.
was when I came out of there that not the only people, but the organizations that really wanted to hire me were the investment banks because I was an MBA with a CA with an MBA and perfect. But that was the last place I wanted to go in terms of the corporate mask and, all that we talked about earlier about being a human and having a family. And that's
Yes.
where I wanted to go at
Good
that point.
call.
Yeah.
Good call. Okay. So I know, Sarah, you're dying to talk about your work and your business. So I'm going to hand this conversation over to you. And I want you to, being American, unapologetically brag, talk about your work, talk about how people can learn more about you, everything and anything you would like people to know about.
Oh, that's really kind of you, Paddy. And we're okay. So the business is the CFO Center, which is a business that provides fractional CFOs to growing entrepreneurial businesses. So
Which, by the way,
typically,
I will have to recommend your company because I recommend fractional CFOs all the time and
brilliant,
fractional HRs and fractional CMOs all the time. Yeah,
brilliant, brilliant. So generally, we work with businesses, growing organizations, say 5 million revenue to 100 million revenue. So it's those businesses that don't need, don't want, can't afford full-time CFO, but recognize they need the skill set.
right.
And then we also work with larger organizations. So the bigger corporates as well. We're starting to work with those around bringing in extra CFO skills to support the group CFO. So those organizations will have a group CFO who basically is sitting there overloaded with all the change that they've got to cope with, saying something like, I wish there was another one of me. And that's what we would do as well. We come
But
in
hang
and
on, though,
bring.
but the company won't support another role, another full-time role, so they'll support. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. And they probably need extra support for projects. So they probably need someone to come in and do, deal with that subsidiary over there that's going a bit south, or to do an M&A project or help with treasury.
Mhm.
So they want specialists who
Mhm.
they don't have to train up. They don't have to oversee too much because these, the people from my organization will have been there and done that role before. They know what it's like to sit in that seat. They've made the
Mhm.
choice not to sit there anymore,
Right,
and they'll
right.
make that group CFO look really good.
Uh,
So it's basically a sort of secret weapon, a secret army for the group CFO to get everything on the shopping list done. So
mhm.
do quite a lot
Mhm.
of that as well, which is really helpful.
That is
Um,
phenomenal. Yeah.
yeah. So, and obviously I've written a book about, um, what is underpinning this industry. So is this fractional role working? And I call it something called the C-suite access economy. So this is where I've drawn on parallels from organizations like Netflix, Spotify, Airbnb. So instead of owning or employing a C-suite, or owning our CDs like we do with Spotify, we log on, we scroll down, and we have a Spotify account and we access the music. And that's what, it's like being in the access economy for the C-suite. We don't have to employ these people anymore. And in fact, that might be the way the future of work's going, in that individuals want to work in portfolios. They want more flexibility, variety, and control over their lives. So I've written a book about that called Strategy and Leadership as Service. And that explains, why this business model works and what are the academic concepts underpinning it. Because I wanted to bring some rigor to the industry to show that,
Mhm.
it's here to stay and to help build it.
Great. And what's next for the business? Because you're growing in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, we're continuing to grow geographically. So I get calls all the time from individuals around the world saying, when are you coming to our country? Because everywhere I go around the world, there's the same entrepreneurs needing the same skills, and there's the
Mhm.
same
Mhm.
CFOs needing and wanting a different life. So, it really is, I think, a global phenomenon. And we will continue to build out the business, and I'm continuing my thought leadership. I've actually started a doctorate at Warwick Business School in the UK to dig further into what's holding these relationships together. Because there's something I found called psychological ownership, which we need in all relationships, by the way, not
I
just
think you need to
access
have a
ones.
conversation with me offline. You don't need your doctor. I
Yes,
could tell you.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
You're an expert in all of that.
Uh, okay. So for the sake of time, I have just one more question for you. And I could talk to you all day. I am so bought into this. Like, it's not even funny. This is definitely the future of work, and you've definitely hit the nail on the head. So I know the future is just going to look bigger and bigger for you. Here's my last question for you. Imagine you have a huge box in front of you, huge box in front of you, and everything that you've ever lost in your life is in that box. What is the first thing you would reach for and why?
Ah. That's a lovely question. I guess it would be the people I've lost touch with,
One in
relationships.
particular? One in particular.
Um, I'd say, yeah, I mean, I have friends from of old who, university, who've been through thick and thin with me, who they're there, but I'm not reaching out to them. So I think that's a really good reminder that I think it would be an open door, is to get back in touch with people that
So,
really
Sarah,
matter.
I mean, thank you so much. I just got goosebumps because you really just tied up not only the conversation today, but who you are as a professional. Because you talked as a finance person, though, and I think part of it's who you are, and I think part of it is who you are as a woman. You really focused on the relationships. So you answered that question to be so true to who you are. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. So can you let people know, can you give them the links, tell them where they can get their book, how they can access your services, give them all the information they need to be able to employ your work.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find out all about the CFO Centre at www.cfocentre.com. And the Liberty Group also is the parent company. And in that business globally, we provide fractional CMOs, CHROs, etc. So that's www.thelibertygroup.com.
And let me just correct,
And
it's Liberty with an I. So
it's with an I, yes. Because it
Liberty.
means freedom in Latin,
Yes, it does.
which is really important.
Yep. Yep.
And then, and my book, you can find that on www.routledge.com, amazon.com. It's called Strategy and Leadership as Service: How the Access Economy Meets the C-Suite.
Okay, so Sara, and it's Sara Daw, DAW, if you'd like to look her up, Sara without an H. And thank you so much for this conversation. This was phenomenal. And everybody, make sure you go out. I would strongly encourage all of you to get Sara's book and to learn more about her resources. And she is definitely cutting edge. So I think she just gave you pearls of wisdom. So Sara, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.